From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Women in ag.
And I can't imagine life any other way.
A new effort to bring more of them to the farm. Concern grows about the world's second largest producer of wheat and what it may or may not be willing to export. A big difference when it comes to dairy.
We could see the milk markets score new all-time highs.
Prices are high, but could that change? A deep dive into the market this morning on AgDay. Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Dairy prices are now at record highs following a turbulent couple of years in the wake of the COVID pandemic. But can those prices continue to race higher? That's a question experts are asking as pressure builds beyond the milking barn. Dairy markets look different since the days of empty restaurants and COVID lockdowns.
You've got record high dairy prices that are probably going to stick around and last longer than usual. The dairy industry has a strong tendency to cure high prices through overproduction, and demand has a tendency to decline.
In fact, just this week, the global dairy auction saw prices fall 8.5%, its biggest drop since August 2015, in what's being called a balk at those higher prices.
And you know, the biggest nemesis of the milk market, as an economist, we used to talk a lot about too much milk. All of a sudden today, with what's happening in New Zealand and Europe, we have an opportunity for that milk to go somewhere. So it's a little different landscape than where we've really been.
But cracks are starting to emerge in the typical tendencies. Even with record prices, cow culling increased by more than 30,000 cows in March compared to February.
Increased feed prices have raised the bar for cows. And so with that bar being raised, then farmers have been more aggressive at culling because of what they need to accomplish as far as paying the bills, having those cows pay for themselves. And that's raised the bar, which then results in higher culling rate.
Now, a lot of this will all be determined this year about hay availability. I mean, if I look to the western U.S., we are still relatively dry, though we have caught some recent rains. But that hay availability with U.S. hay seedings at their lowest level since 1907 is going to be the big driver, I believe, for especially those cull rates in the southern plains in the western U.S.
And milk production in the first quarter dropped 1% year over year. Drought, high feed costs, and labor issues all weighing on production.
As a dairy producer, uncertain about their inputs because of tight supplies and where they're going to get these inputs if there's a weather market, so there's a caution to expand the herd. And the other thing is just a labor issue, getting enough help to expand in a portfolio. Look at how you're going to grow your business. Do you have the labor to expand? That is a major issue in the dairy industry right now.
I need to understand a little bit more about milk production, because milk production or per cow output is still relatively steady. If it increases, then we're looking at maybe the market holding in this $22 to $26 range. However, it becomes lower, we could see the milk market score new all-time highs, maybe as high as $29 or $30.
India now says it is not moving to curb wheat exports. The announcement coming after a Bloomberg report earlier had said it was considering restrictions after a heat wave had damaged crops. Now, India is the world's second biggest producer of wheat. The news sending wheat up double digits again here at home out of concern it would exacerbate already tight global supplies due to the war in Ukraine. India Food and Farm Ministry officials saying the country can still easily export at least 8 million tons of wheat this year. It said the government would only consider curbing exports if there's a sudden and unexpected surge in overseas shipments. But the country's food secretary told Reuters, quote, "There is no move to curb wheat exports as the country has sufficient stocks of wheat," end quote. USDA has stated any type of export ban or grain embargo isn't even on the table today. But what if supplies grow even tighter and the government does intervene? Texas Tech University economist Darren Hudson says it could have a dramatic impact on grain prices.
One of the things that we learned from, say, the Russian wheat embargo and things like that is commodities are fairly fungible. This isn't like technology in the sense that we have a control of night vision goggles, for example, and we can not export those. Commodities flow around the world, based on what those policies are, but they flow around the world and prices adjust to them.
India has cut its wheat output forecast to 105 million tons. That's down from a February estimate of just over 111 million tons. Efforts continue to get grain moving out of Ukraine in spite of the Russian invasion. Recently, a ship loaded with Ukrainian corn left a Romanian Black Sea port. But right now, Ukraine grain exports are about a third of what they were a year ago. APK Inform, which keeps up on grain movement in the Black Sea, reports the country exported 923,000 metric tons of grain in April. That's down from 2.8 million metric tons for the same month last year. The total included corn and wheat. It also managed to export some sunflower oil and oil seeds. For the first time, in an effort to protect the nation's second largest reservoir, the federal government says more water will flow into Lake Powell from upstream reservoirs and less will be released downstream. It's due to worsening drought conditions along the Colorado River. The U.S. Assistant Secretary of Water and Science says the move will allow the Glen Canyon Dam to continue producing hydropower for the West while officials figure out how to operate the dam with lower water elevations. Officials say right now, Lake Powell's water surface elevation is just over 3,500 feet. That's its lowest level since originally being filled in the 1960s. And that's nearing the lowest level at which point the dam can generate hydropower. The decision won't have any immediate impacts on the amount of water allocated for the region's cities and its farms, but it reflects growing challenges in the region where roughly 40 million people live and where ag is a $5 billion a year industry. If planting wasn't running far enough behind in the Midwest, now there's word even more rain is on the way. Meteorologist Matt Yurosavik is here with an update. Matt?
Yeah, Clinton, that's right. We're going to have more rain through the Midwest into the Ohio Valley and then over towards the East Coast as we head over the next few days. So could be heavy rain as well. Let's take a look at that system here on our future track model showing you it starts out in parts of Kansas and Oklahoma. As that system starts to move eastward, that warm front advances north. Rain and some thunderstorms out ahead of the low, which will eventually make its way through Missouri and into places like Illinois and southern Indiana. Again, rain out ahead of that, and some of that could be heavy rain that continues through the day on Friday before that storm system exits the East Coast over the weekend. And you can see from Kansas through Missouri all the way through the Ohio Valley and into the East Coast, we've got rainfall that could top out between 1 and 2 inches, with isolated spots even being closer to 3 inches. There's that storm system right where it says mild moving eastward, and as it does through the weekend, watch what happens in the east. We've got a big ridge building, and into next week we could be near record temperatures across parts of the eastern half of the country heading into next week. So that's something we'll be tracking very closely here on Ag Day. And some farmers are managing to get planting going. Gentry Clark sharing this picture with us, saying he finished up Saturday in northwestern Mississippi. USDA reporting Mississippi has planted about 48% of its soybean crop. That's 4% above average. I'll have more on your forecast coming up.
Wheat markets surging on Wednesday following those new reports out of India. We'll discuss next. And later, a conference celebrating women in agriculture just in time to celebrate Mom this weekend. That's today in the country.
It's time to sign up for the 2022 United Pork Americas Conference in Orlando, Florida. Register today at unitedporkamericas.com and join us September 7th through the 9th.
We're joined today by Dan Bossie with Ag Resource Company. Dan, as we look at kind of overall global trade, obviously the situation between Ukraine and Russia has really taken a shot at global wheat exports, but a lot of folks were expecting India to step in here. Where does that stand today?
Well, India was a very big part of the equation. We thought they would step in because of high prices now to maybe export as much as 10 million tons of wheat in the upcoming crop year, 22-23. But all of a sudden, we've seen some very dramatic weather, record heat across Pakistan, record heat across India. Now, of course, an Indian wheat crop that USDA was forecasting at about 109. We're now looking, and that comes from the attaché, is now probably under 100. If we get a wheat crop there that goes much lower, India will be forced to basically ban exports because it needs all the wheat itself. And then I'm left with the EU and the U.S. is being the primary exporters until our Canadian friends come along with their harvest and export availability probably in about October, November.
As we look at the situation here at home, we've got plenty of challenges for the wheat crop here at home to get to harvest as well.
Well, absolutely. And if you're a world wheat importer or a buyer or a miller, it's been very difficult in the world market to begin with. You leak some wheat out of Russia, nothing's happening in Ukraine. Those two areas start to export about 8 or 9 million metric tons of wheat as we get into the months of July, August, and September. That's their harvest. This is when the noose really tightens around the world wheat market in terms of, can the EU export 12 million metric tons a month? Can the U.S. step in and help with its crop? Uncertain at this point, but boy, we really needed that Indian crop. And then its neighbor, of course, Pakistan, if it has a shortfall, you may see, of course, then become a significant importer of 4 to 6 million tons, important in its own right.
Real quick, Dan, is this different? Are we in different times for the global wheat market right now?
There is no doubt we are in different times, not only in global wheat, but also global corn and global soybeans. We just cannot lose a metric ton or lose a bushel. There is no slippage. And it only takes one major weather problem somewhere of a major producer, and we are going to have what some of the people would call a food crisis. So, the markets or Chicago is going to be extremely volatile, but I don't think you'll sustain any kind of downside until we get beyond the pollination dates or potting dates here in the United States.
All right, Dan, sure appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here. We'll be back with more Ag Day coming up in just
Find farm equipment on Machinery Pete's May 17th online auction. No reserve, no buyer fees. Start bidding now at auctions.machinerypete.com.
Meteorologist Matt Yarosavik joining us now. Matt, as we look at the jet stream, going to be some changes here over the next few days.
There's going to be a lot of changes, especially into next week. Right now, keeping it very, very unsettled, but next week, a bigger ridge builds into the east. And that warmth will be coming from out in the southwest, but right now we've got a little bit of a ridge there in the east, a little bit of a trough through the middle of the country. This is going to be that system moving eastward, bringing some rain that we talked about just a little bit ago. But once that comes through, it brings all that warmth into the east. So let's take a look at that here. There goes that system moving off to the east, bringing the cooler temperatures there to the north. A little bit mild, though, all the way down into the Tennessee Valley. And then here comes the warmth, starting out there in Texas, parts of Texas, New Mexico, back to Arizona and Southern California. And watch how quickly this ridge builds in. Sunday into Monday, all the way up into the Great Lakes, but it gets even warmer with what could be flirting with some spots, some record high temperatures is what we could be talking about through the middle part of next week. Meanwhile, it stays unsettled in the west, which is good news for us. We do need a little bit of rain, but it also stays cooler back in the west. But from Texas on to the north and east, lots of warmth through next week. Here's a look, though. Severe weather risk as we head through today. That's confined down here to Arkansas, parts of Texas and Louisiana. A greater scale for a couple of severe storms all the way from St. Louis down to parts of Louisiana and back to Houston and just to the east of San Angelo. Then that moves eastward with that storm system, bringing the threat for severe storms just to the east of Jackson, over toward Atlanta, up towards parts of Tennessee and into the Carolinas as we head towards the evening. So here's a look at that storm. This is really the only player on the map right now. High pressure out to the west and one storm bringing some rain up there to the northern Rockies. As this storm system moves eastward all the way through the day on Friday, it'll continue spinning as it moves off the coast heading into the weekend, but then things dry out and here comes the warmth back towards the west. We're going to be talking about a lot of rain too. Kansas to Oklahoma, Texas, all the way through the Great Lakes and then eastward towards Pennsylvania and the Jersey coast. Could be seeing an inch plus of rainfall. And out ahead of that storm system, it is going to be very, very warm. And then behind it gets a little bit cooler back in the Pacific Northwest, but the heat will be on as we head into next week. That's a look around the country. Now let's take a look at the weather where you live. Punta Gorda, Florida, sunny and hot, a high of 92 degrees. Heavy rain and thunderstorms possible in Howard, Kansas, a high of 70 degrees. And Yuma, Arizona, sunny and hot, a high near 100 degrees.
Drover's Report on AgDay is brought to you by Long Range Apridomectin. If you're committed to peak performance, there's only one choice for your dewormer, Long Range Apridomectin. It's the first and only dewormer to offer up to 150 days of parasite control in one convenient dose.
Not just dairy, but beef cow slaughter numbers right now are surprising many in the industry. Darrell Peel of Oklahoma State University writing for Drovers that beef cow slaughter is up almost 17% year over year. He believes it's due to the continued drought impacts carried over from last year, combined with very strong cull cow prices and limited forage prospects going forward. Now, Peel recently noticing that placements came in much larger in the latest cattle on feed report, and he believes the drought has something to do with that as well.
Well, if you look on the state-by-state breakdown, the biggest increase in placements was in Nebraska. But I think the real question is sort of where did those cattle come from? We didn't pick it up in the auction data or the sort of publicly available data. That's why it was such a surprise to see that large level of placements. And so, I think maybe there were some direct sales of cattle since it was Nebraska. Maybe this was coming out of some of the areas where drought is developing, and that may account for some of the increase in placements.
Peel says liquidation is expected to continue in the first half of the year unless drought conditions improve immediately and significantly. Make sure to check out his latest report on drovers.com entitled The Cow Herd Numbers Game. Mosquitoes are the ultimate pest for cattle. Now scientists are trying to prevent them from being carriers of diseases by taking a deeper dive into their genes. Scientists at Texas A&M AgriLife Research are using technology to make temporary genetic modifications in mosquitoes, and those modifications can actually delete themselves over time. It's hoped the technology will one day be able to modify mosquitoes and prevent diseases like West Nile virus from spreading. Now, they say they have a lot more testing to do, and they're getting a 5-year, $4 million grant from the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases to try to make it happen. In case you forgot, this weekend is Mother's Day, and there's no better time to celebrate women in agriculture, including a trip to a conference hoping to inspire more into the profession. That story next. Sunday is Mother's Day, and we all know the important role moms and all women play on the farm. USDA reports there are 28,000 women farmers in Tennessee alone, but what can be done to increase that number? Charles Denny takes us to a conference trying to do just that.
Building a bouquet, pretty cut flowers collected by the handful. Colby Nicewander usually works on her family's Lawrence County cattle farm, but here she learns horticulture, one of the ladies in the Cultivate Conference, Women in Agriculture. Nicewander appreciates the support here and is willing to mentor others.
There are women that spoke out last night that are just interested in getting started, and I was there not long ago, so I would love to be a resource for them if they need help.
We've got women who have chicken houses, who have goat operations, sheep operations, cut flower operations.
TSU and UT Extension coordinated the conference, lining up speakers and hands-on demonstrations like this soil testing. Another session you could attend, how to handle cattle on horseback, limiting animal stress. A number of female extension agents were involved and believe they can make a connection here with other women.
But it's been something that's heavy on all of our hearts to try and just reach those women who may have questions they may not feel comfortable asking, or they just don't really understand something, and it's easier just to hear that from another woman.
The USDA's most recent census shows women make up about 36% of all American farmers, but that's a 27% increase in the past decade. And a number of women turned to agriculture during the pandemic as a new way to earn a living. Ashley Stokes has worked as a veterinarian, beef industry partner, and now serves as dean of UT Extension. She believes when it comes to agriculture, more women are seeking educational opportunities to grow their skill set.
And whether it's within a family operation that they expand what they do, take a more prominent role, or as entrepreneurs on their own with agriculture. So women in agriculture, I think it's always had a very special place.
Farm life is hard work, embraced only by the hardy in spirit. Extension plans more of these conferences in the future. This is Charles Denny reporting.
All right, thanks, Charles, and thank you for watching. That's all of our time today. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clint Griffiths. Have a great day out in farm country.